Just learned that, or was reminded that for receiving testimony, we can do it with reduced quorum. And we have the 4 members, including a member of the opposition, so actually 2 members of the opposition, so we will get started. Welcome to our guests today. We have from the Office of the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Yves Giroux, Parliamentary Budget Officer, and Jason, we just had this conversation, Jake, okay, the Senior Director, Costing and Budgetary Analysis. We had the discussion, it was a Portuguese name, and yeah, so welcome to the committee today. What we're going to do is get into your opening statement. We'll give you up to 10 minutes, and then we'll get into our rounds of questions and answers for an hour. And in 1 hour, we will end and go into closed. So that's how the day will go today. Just so everybody's reminded, we actually had a motion that was brought forward, and the motion simply was that the committee schedule one meeting with the Parliamentary Budget Officer to discuss the recent report, Fiscal and Distributional Analysis of the Federal Carbon Pricing System. So that's the intent of the meeting today, and we'll spend 1 hour having that discussion. So with that, Mr. Giroux, I'll turn it over to you for your opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be here. It's my first appearance before the Environment Committee. I have to admit I'm a bit nervous. Unknown faces, I don't know what to expect yet, but so far I have a very good impression, so I'm becoming less and less nervous. Thank you for the invitation. I'm pleased to be here, as I said, for my first appearance to discuss the analysis of our report, the federal pricing of the federal carbon pricing system published at the end of April. I'm joined by Jason Jakes, who's the Director General in my office, and together we'll try to the best of our capacity to respond to your questions. Comme vous le savez,
As you know, the Parliamentary Budget Officer provides parliamentarians with economic and financial analyses that are independent and nonpartisan. As the Act indicates, we provide these analyses in order to increase the quality of parliamentary debates and to strengthen transparency and accountability in financial matters. Pursuant to my mandate, my office produced a financial analysis of the implementation of the federal carbon pricing system in Ontario, New Brunswick, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. Our report presents an independent estimate of receipts generated by the federal carbon pricing system. It also provides an estimate of the net financial repercussions for households in various income categories in the first 4 provinces that do not have carbon plans that respect federal standards.
The federal government will generate $2.6 billion in carbon pricing revenues in 2019-20. The vast majority of these revenues, $2.4 billion, will be generated through the fuel charge, and the balance, roughly $200 million, will be generated by output-based pricing. In addition, we estimate that by 2023-24, carbon pricing revenues will increase to $6.2 billion, with fuel charge proceeds accounting for $5.77 billion, and OBPS, which I much prefer to output-based pricing, which I have a hard time pronouncing, accounting for the rest. Our report also studied the impact of the carbon price on households based on annual income level and region. Regions currently using carbon-intensive energy, such as Saskatchewan, can expect higher costs. The federal government has stated that all proceeds from the fuel charge will be returned directly to households and particularly affected sectors in Ontario, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Our findings indicate that under the government's proposed Climate Action Incentive Payments Plan, most households will receive more than what they paid in fuel charges. Before proceeding to your questions, I'd like to take a moment to inform the committee of our next publication. Tomorrow morning, we will be releasing our latest carbon pricing analysis report. This report will provide an independent estimate of the additional carbon price that would be needed to achieve Canada's greenhouse gas emissions target in 2030 under the Paris Agreement, as well as an estimate of the corresponding impact on the Canadian economy. I don't typically use the full 10 minutes, and I don't plan to deviate from that, as I would like to let you ask as many questions as you want. So Jason and I would be pleased to respond to any questions you may have regarding our fiscal and distributional analysis of the federal carbon pricing system report or other PBO analysis. But I should state that I will probably be very reluctant to take questions from Mr. Fisher, given the jersey that he wears today. Thank you.
At least that's enhanced.
And that's why we didn't put him on the list. We don't care for his jersey either.
Thank you so much for your opening comments. And we've actually been a fairly amicable working group over this term, and we'll see if that carries through today. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Chong as a guest to our meeting today. And with that, I will also mention we use a handy card system here. So when there's 1 minute left in the round of questions, I give the 1 minute warning. And then when time's up, I give the red flag. And don't cut off mid-sentence, but just kind of include your thought, and then we'll go on to the next round of questions. So first up on the government side, we have Mr. Bosio for 6 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for being here today. We've been waiting with anticipation to hear your report and to look at your report, I should say, and hear what you had to say today. And I look forward to hearing the answers to the questions. This is such an important issue because, as we've seen, much misinformation out there around the impact on the price of pollution that our government has implemented, and many trying to say that no, we've got it wrong, that it's actually going to destroy our economy and kill jobs and create an inordinate amount of devastation to the most vulnerable within our society. And I'm happy to hear, in your report that you actually have confirmed what we've been saying all along, is that most Canadians will be better off with a price on pollution. They will receive more in the rebate than they will actually pay out. But I'd like you to break down the numbers a little further, because we hear, it's not just those who are driving to work, those who live in rural communities, the higher price of groceries and everything. Can you give us a sense of what are the different areas that you actually used in your analysis to make that determination that 8 out of 10 Canadians will be better off with the rebate than they pay out they'll benefit more from the rebate than they pay out in the price and pollution?
Sure. So we looked at, obviously, the direct costs through higher fuel prices, so higher energy prices that households directly consume. So the gas they put in their cars, the heat that they need to generate in winter, and God knows it's been long this year. So the higher prices for gas, electricity generation. So in provinces where electricity is generated using fuel-based sources, for example, Saskatchewan. So we factored in these direct costs paid by households, but we also know, obviously, that some of the goods, or most of the goods that Canadian households buy, also have a fuel component to them. So, for example, if you buy something at a supermarket, it's been transported to the supermarket, so the transport that's inherent in these goods that people buy have a component of fuel. So we looked at we used input-output tables to figure out how much fuel and how much carbon-based fuel is inputted in each production factors, in each transactions, in each goods that consumers buy, factoring that into the equation, and assuming that consumers get passed on all of the increases, which is consistent with literature. So we estimated the amount of increases in prices or the amounts that households will have to pay, the higher price for some goods as well as their energy consumption. So that's the payment side. And on the other hand, we also looked at how much the the climate incentive plan will reimburse Canadians, assuming that 90% of the proceeds from the charge will be reimbursed to households. We did that as an average, but we also looked at consumption patterns based on quintile, by income quintile. And that's why we have different net impacts by income quintile, because lower quintile households tend to spend obviously less. There's fewer people in lowest quintile households. Obviously, if there's 2 working persons in the household, they tend to be higher up the income scale. And the higher up you go in the income scale, the more people tend to be in the household, the more they tend to consume fuel-based products as well as energy in general. And that's how we derived the estimates that we have. And in summary, the conclusion is that the majority of households. Is that the yellow card?
No.
Okay.
No.
So the majority of households will receive more on a net basis than what they will pay. The exception is the 20% of households with the highest income. They will be net contributors. Of course, that's an average. It doesn't mean that every single household who's in lower income quintiles will be receiving more. It depends on the particular lifestyle, the consumption patterns, and that's a criticism that's been addressed to us. But obviously, it's an average by income quintile and by province.
So to recap, you've looked at both the direct and indirect costs of a price on pollution to the household. You've then looked at the average rebate, or the rebate that all households will receive, and based on that, the vast majority, 8 out of 10 Canadians, will receive more on the rebate than they will pay out on the price on pollution.
That's correct. Yes.
I guess I think I'm pretty much out of time, Chair. How much time do I
20
have?
seconds.
20 seconds. Okay, I guess I'll leave it there then. I will pick it up again. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll move over to Monsieur Godin for his 6 minutes worth of questions.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et en entrée de jeu,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the outset, I'd like to welcome you. Your nervousness has not shown too much so far. For my colleague here, I don't have my St. Louis Blues jersey, but I'd be pleased to wear it, and we can talk about that tomorrow. So, Mr. Giroux, I have a question. I'm trying to understand. You're presenting a financial or fiscal analysis. I know that this is in the future, but I'd like you to explain on what basis you estimated the costs and the revenue by quintile, by province, per capita. It's quite complex. These are projections in a way. How did you arrive at these? What's the data that you use to arrive at these results? Well, it is true that there are a lot of figures, a lot of calculations that are inherent in this kind of data. What we looked at, first of all, is household consumption per province and by income quintile. And that data is available through Statistics Canada that does regular surveys, survey after survey, to see what the patterns are of household consumption for energy, as well as goods and services. So that is one of the important elements to determine the consumption of every household by quintile and their composition, how many people, how many adults, how many children in the household. That's consumption of households to determine how much they'll be paying in carbon pricing, and the amount per ton of carbon that is known, that is determined in the coming years, or from 2018 to 2022, that will go from $20 to $50 a ton. And therefore, we can determine with some certainty how much this will mean for gas prices, natural gas prices, and the price of other fossil fuels. We know that a liter of gasoline generates about 2.2 kilograms of carbon. So if you put a price of $20 a ton on that, you can easily transfer it to 4.4 cents per liter. So doing that, you arrive at a price that the consumer will have to pay. And to determine the net amount, we looked at in payments or rebate, because the government announced in the last budget or the last economic update the structure of the rebates that will be paid to households, and that amount is fixed. It won't depend on consumption, but the makeup of the household. It won't be influenced by income. So how much households will pay and how much they'll receive determines the amount per quintile. These are averages, as I mentioned. It's possible that a household with a different consumption pattern, people who drive a lot, let's say, or heat with natural gas or oil, will pay far more than someone who lives downtown and uses public transit or walks to work. So there are differences within those quintiles, but we arrived at averages to come up with an overall picture. Okay, what I'm to understand from your explanation is that when it comes to models for estimates, you evaluated that greenhouse gas emissions will go up or will be reduced. We looked at elasticity, that is the impact of the price on the propensity of households and businesses to use sources of energy. Greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced, not in a dramatic way, but they will go down by 4 or 5%. I don't have the exact figure in mind, but they will be lowered because of the transfer to electricity that uses fossil fuels to sources that are more neutral. Mr. Chairman, I would like the witness to provide a model of the reduction in GHGs between now and 2030. If you could send that to the committee, if you have that data. Earlier, you said that when it comes to the rebate, the 90% that goes back to the citizen, that is a fixed amount. It will be determined clearly. There's no variation according to consumption, and it's not directly related to the amount of money generated by the carbon tax. Is that what I understood? Well, maybe I expressed myself badly because I think I'm often told I express myself badly. The amount is fixed for the year in course, but subsequently it will depend on the total amount generated by the carbon tax. It will increase as the government increases this. So the annual increase from $20 to $50 in the next years increases the envelope, and that envelope will be distributed according to specific criteria. What are the criteria to determine that the lowest quintile in Saskatchewan, let's say, will get $117 more than what it costed? The amounts that will be paid in each of the jurisdictions will not depend on income. It'll depend on the number of adults and children in a household. It's a fixed amount per adult and per child. And that's... Okay, a quick question. What I want to know is, if it doesn't generate that much money...
We're just over the minute here. So we're going to go down to Mr. Stetsky. Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to start by thanking you for the work that you do and the work that you're going to be doing, costing out platform pieces going forward. Really very much look forward to that. Did you have an opportunity to kind of look across the country at all? I'm from British Columbia, and of course we've had a carbon tax in place since 2008. But been trying to figure out whether, as a citizen of the province, whether the federal plan would be more beneficial to me than the provincial plan currently as it exists. So did you get an opportunity to look at some of the other plans that are already in place and their efficiency, or no?
That was not part of our report. We focused on the 4 provinces that are part of the federal backstop. Territories, 2 territories, I think, are also part of the federal backstop, and we didn't look at these territories for lack of sufficient data for the 2 territories. So unfortunately, I cannot tell you whether you'd be better off in BC as opposed to in the 4 provinces that we looked at, because we didn't look at these other provinces.
When we were doing our study on climate change, we did hear from farmers and people in agriculture industry that certainly there are some reductions in carbon costs to them, but there were also other existing costs like drying grain, for example, that required a different kind of fuel that they were not compensated for. So again, did you have the opportunity to sort of look by sector or business to see how, for example, farmers might fare under this program?
You want to?
While I think the short answer to your question is no. Like, while our model does take into account the detailed information that's been collected by the government around large industrial emitters and intensive users, we didn't specifically look at things on a sector-by-sector basis. The motivation was primarily to look at things on a geographic basis and focusing on the actual impact on households.
Now, is that something you can do? Can you look at something like agriculture in general and decide whether there'll be a net gain or cost under the program?
Yeah, it's something we could look at. If I'm not mistaken, the government has stated that it will exempt the agricultural sector. I may be on thin ice here, but
Aspects of it.
yes.
Yeah, but there were other ones that aren't
Yeah.
exempt.
So it's something that we certainly could look at.
Okay, good. I'd appreciate that information. The rebates, 80% of families will receive more money than the tax is going to cost them. And in essence, you suggested that the wealthier people, potentially, that's not going to be the case. But is that because of the way this was designed, or is it kind of by accident? In other words, is this a progressive tax where poor people would benefit more than richer people, or did that happen by accident?
I'm not sure whether it was by design or by accident. To be able to answer that with a high level of certainty, we need to ask the persons who did design the incentive payment. But it's due, just looking at the numbers, it's due to different consumption patterns. So that poor households obviously have less money to spend, and richer households, they tend to have more people, and they tend to spend more. They drive bigger cars, drive longer distances, have bigger houses that need more fuel for heating purposes, consume more electricity when the electricity is generated using carbon-intensive sources, and so on. So because of the different consumption patterns, richer households tend to have a bigger carbon footprint, so to speak.
So basically, it's a result of lifestyle, potentially,
Yes.
not necessarily by program design along the way.
Yeah.
Nav.
I'm curious if you, and I know you're not allowed to release information on reports before you release them, but can you just summarize again? I'm quite interested in this report that you're going to be releasing tomorrow. And did I understand that it's a report on how much carbon pricing will have to be in order to reach Canada's GHG reduction targets? Is that what it's going to be?
Yep, that's exact. So the report tomorrow will quantify the price that will have to be applied to carbon emissions between 2023 and 2030 in order for Canada to meet its targets under the Paris Agreement. So how much will a ton of carbon will have to be priced for emissions to be reduced sufficiently to meet the Paris targets? So that's what the report will be about, and it will look at the price that would have to be applied nationally, because we know that between now and 2022, there's a series of provinces that have put in place measures that have been deemed sufficient by the federal government, and there are 4 provinces, and I believe soon to be 5, that don't have a regime that's meeting the federal criteria. So what we looked at for simplicity's sake and for illustrative purposes, how much would carbon need to be priced nationally, applied to virtually all sectors except agriculture, for the country to meet its Paris targets.
It's unfortunate timing. I'd love to be able to hear and question that report as well. So I guess we could filibuster right through till tomorrow when the report's released.
Well, we do get back to you at the end, Mr. Setsky, and everybody else respects their time. There might even be a little bit of extra. We're going to go over here to Mr. Bosio and perhaps Mr. Amos for the next 6 minutes.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things from our conversation earlier. So once again, 8 out of 10 Canadians are going to benefit more from the rebate than what they're paying out in a price on pollution, and that's all provinces where the federal backstop will be in place. Correct?
That's exact. We looked at these 4 provinces because that's where the regime is the federal backstop, and it's the same. It's the same in all 4 provinces, as opposed to the other provinces where it's a different mix of measures, different than the federal backstop, and different also between provinces themselves.
And all the money that is raised, all the revenue that is raised within those provinces, the rebate will go back to the province in which the revenue has been raised. Correctly?
Yes, that's our assumption, and 90% of the revenues generated will be returned to households, and the remaining 10% will be going to affected sectors. That's our understanding of the government's policy.
And if I remember correctly in your report, even the wealthiest, the 2 out of 10 Canadians that will pay more, you had indicated that was going to be on average $50 more.
I don't have the exact numbers right in front of me at this very moment, but yes, they'll be receiving, if you bear with me for a second, it depends on the jurisdiction. For example, in Saskatchewan, by the end of the period, so when the price of carbon reaches $50 a ton, they'll be paying on a net basis $112 or $113, and that's the province where richest households are the most affected, whereas in New Brunswick, the 20% at the higher end of the income distribution will pay on a net basis $14 per year. So,
right. And so when we hear from conservatives that average Canadians, low and middle income Canadians, are going to be punished by this price on pollution, and that it's going to vastly increase their costs, I've heard numbers of $800. I've heard numbers of up to $5,000 that they will pay above and beyond. That is not what you found in your analysis.
Well, on a net basis, no, but on a gross basis, we found that on average, the highest quintile, for example, in Saskatchewan, will pay between $585 to $1,200 over the period, the period that stretches from 1920 to 23-24, but that's on a gross basis. That's before the rebate, exactly. So on a gross basis, it's true that households will have to pay more, and depending on the consumption patterns, it could be a few $100s, it could be $1,000, but on a net basis, after the rebate, it is significantly less.
Or actually not at all. They're actually going to gain on that rebate, 8 out of 10 Canadians. So I mean, it's a bit okay. So it's a bit misleading then to say that this is going to cost Canadians because they're not including the rebate portion of that analysis.
Well, the gross and the net are 2 different costs. So I'll let you use the adjectives or not, but
okay. And I wanted to ask, this is in relation as well to where Mr. Setsky was going at the end of his comments on your report tomorrow, and I know you can't divulge any information there, but I did want to ask one thing in that report. When you say that you're looking at a price on pollution and the impact or the amount that it needs to get to by 2030 in order to meet our GHG emissions, is that taking into account the other 50 plus measures that are in place by government? So you're going to be balancing that analysis across all the measures that are being taken in order to meet that target, or are you only just using this one measurement? And if so, really, what is the value in doing that analysis if you're not going to take into consideration all of the measures that are going to be in place to deal with GHG emissions reduction?
The report tomorrow will incorporate in computing the amount and determining the amount necessary to reach the Paris targets, takes into consideration all the measures that were in place or had been announced as of September 2018. So all the measures, and we had to do a cutoff because at one point we had to get the work going and input that into our model. So it will include the vast majority of the measures that have been announced or already implemented.
And there's an unmodeled portion of analysis by the government that I think is about 76 or 79 megatons. So have you been able to actually then find the data sets that will take into account the unmodeled portion of those measures towards meeting those targets?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, so we should probably talk after we have released the report because I find it a bit difficult to speak in the abstract.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate once again your forthrightness in answering the questions. Thank you. I hope we weren't too hard on you.
Mr. Chong, we'll go over to you now for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. When you did your analysis, you focused just on the federal backstop. In each of those 4 provinces, there are various provincial plans that have put a price on carbon, directly or indirectly. And so can you tell us what revenues would be derived from those provincial revenues, from those provincial plans?
There are several measures in each of these 4 provinces. I know that, and we have not quantified them because the purpose of the report was to determine whether what the government had alleged, that is, that the federal backstop provinces, individuals or households in these provinces would indeed receive the amounts or would be better off in most cases.
So let me ask the question differently then. So collectively, these 4 provinces in 2017 had roughly 275 megatons worth of emissions. What percent of those emissions are covered by the federal backstop?
That's a very good question. I would assume it's close to 100%, but I'm not certain of that. So I shouldn't put a number because I should get back to you on this one.
So I guess here's my question. So when the government announced its Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change in October 2006, they also announced the price, starting at $10 a ton, moving to $50 a ton by 2022. And the assumption at the time was that this would be an economy-wide price, a price across not only all economic sectors, but also across across the entire country. And hence, when provinces didn't step up to the plate, the federal backstop would kick in. So when I look at, let's just use 275 megatons as the rough number for emissions from those 4 provinces, the effective price is quite a bit lower than that. If the backstop is covering almost all of the emissions in those 4 respective provinces, in 2019 you get an effective price of roughly $10 a ton across those economic sectors, and by 2022 you get an effective price of roughly $25 a ton rather than $50. And so I guess I point that out as a disconnect between the price that was announced 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and what the effective price is. Because most economists have indicated that they think, Canada needs to go to an effective price of $130 or dollars a ton or more by 2030 in order to meet the Paris Accord targets.
Yeah. What we looked at includes the direct costs of two households, but it does not, well, it does include the output-based pricing system where large emitters can trade between them, and if they go above the average for their sector, have to pay the price on what's above that. So you're right.
I guess it's safe to say that the output-based pricing system has an effective price per ton that's quite a bit lower than the price that retail consumers would pay at the pump, for example.
Yep, that's a fair assessment, indeed.
I don't have any other questions.
Joël, do you want? There's still 2 minutes.
Monsieur le directeur.
Sir, I'd like to get back to what we were talking about earlier. If not enough money is generated through the carbon tax, the government will get the money where to pay for these rebates to citizens? Because if I understand correctly, this is supposed to be self-financing. 90% will go back to the taxpayers, and the taxpayers will receive more money than they will have paid, according to estimates. If in your models they don't attain that amount, where's the money going to come from? Are you going to cut the rebates to consumers, or you get it somewhere else? In the federal model, what was announced is that the government will return 90% of the revenue generated by the carbon tax. So if the amounts paid to taxpayers, which are paid a little in advance, are higher than what the government generates, there will have to be a reduction in accordance with that to make sure the 90% is respected. If ever the government decides to freeze the amounts or to continue with the rebates as provided for, then there'll have to be a mechanism to reimburse or cover the shortfall. Thank you. I understand. A simplistic question here, perhaps. In this study, did you measure greenhouse gas reductions in those 4 provinces? Yes, we measured it, and we went with hypotheses provided or data provided by the National Energy Board. A 22-page report, which I can't find the exact page where the reductions are mentioned, but we did in fact use that. No, I think I'm mixed up here with another report. Well, you can continue.
And in 6 minutes, so we'll give you a chance to respond at that point. We're going to go over to Ms. Zerowitz for 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your excellent presentation. I'm going to ask you some fairly general questions just because these are the questions that I hear at the doors or what my constituents ask. And so it's nice for me to be able to play back and hear directly from those that are actually writing a report on this. You've mentioned that 80% of households will get back more than what they pay in increased costs due to carbon pricing. So focusing just in Ontario, how much will they pay? So we know how much they're going to get back in Ontario, but how much will they actually pay? So if they're going to get back more, what is it that we've estimated that they'll actually pay?
Thank you. So in Ontario, we've estimated that starting in this current fiscal year, they will pay between $131 for the lowest quintile households, rising to $401 for the richest quintile.
Then
401.
Okay, and that's your report in terms of it's listed how much they pay for year 1.
Yes.
Okay. And can you just tell me the second and third quintile as well?
Of course, for the second quintile, it's 179.
Yep. And third?
For the third, it's 245.
And the fourth one?
The fourth is 305.
Perfect.
And that's in the first year.
Okay. And is it different between what they pay, whether you're in rural or in urban areas?
It is indeed different, and that's a question that we've received ourselves quite a lot. But we didn't distinguish between rural and urban. We distinguished just by province and by income quintile because there would be additional complexities in trying to determine what's rural and what's urban. In the two extremes, it's fairly easy, downtown Toronto or rural Ontario, but what about the suburbs and semi-rural? So it gets a bit more complex, and we didn't go to that level of refinement in our study.
And when we're looking at what an Ontarian would pay, again, just because I'm a downtown West Toronto riding, so I'm focused on Ontario. If you can, are you able to break down what it is that they are paying? So whether it's fuel, food, gas, like do you have main categories, and would you say that 20% will be an increase in food, or 30% will be additional fuel costs, or are you able to break it down just in general?
Do you know?
Yeah, we do. As part of the model, we did have that information. As Mr. Giroux mentioned, we used Statistics Canada's input-output tables to actually, as well as their surveys of household consumption. So it allows us to actually see what are households actually consuming and what is the implicit fuel embedded in each of those items that they're consuming, and then in turn, adding on or using the additional carbon levy on top of that. It's not something that we actually published in the report, but to the extent that there's additional interest, we can certainly take a look at reformatting some data tables and sharing those with the committee.
I would love to get an idea about more or less it's going to be sort of increase in food prices or fuel prices or heating costs. That just gives me a really good idea about how to even prepare the people in my riding. So that would be helpful to me. And if you'd be able to submit that to the chair and to this committee, I'd be grateful. The second part, when I look at your report, is it talks about large emitters and output-based pricing system. And one of the key things that I hear that I know is misinformation in my community is that large companies or large emitters don't pay. But is that the case, or are large emitters paying and they pay through this output-based pricing system?
That's an interesting question that I asked myself when we first started looking at that, and it's a common comment that I've heard. Under the OBPS, as I prefer to call it, to avoid mumbling the words, the large emitters will have a baseline, and so those that are more efficient than the average will have credits. Those that are less efficient, that emit more, will have to pay or buy the credits from those that are more efficient. Smaller emitters that are not required to operate under the output-based system will be able to participate if they want, and in the event that they are more efficient, they'll be able to sell their credits to large emitters that are not as efficient.
So just for the general public, when you say they have a baseline, so they're saying, here's your baseline for emissions. If you actually produce less emissions in that baseline, you actually have some credits. And if you produce more, then you actually have to pay more out. And so that is what the output-based pricing system is. The reason we have this system for our large emitters or companies, is it because I think this is something that sort of your general, like big companies around the world or within countries actually all have, because it's a way for them to stay competitive. So why is it that there's this particular type of system for large emitters?
Well, that's a question that would be best answered by the minister herself and probably the government in general. But my understanding is it's to avoid negatively affecting the competitiveness of big emitters. But to go back to your initial question, it is true that those that have that baseline, they have a permit to emit at no cost. It's those that are above the threshold that will have to pay.
Thank you.
And Jason has not kicked me on the table, so that means I'm...
So we'll move on while you're still good.
Thank you.
And unbruised. Okay. Monsieur Gaudin, back to you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to get back to what I was discussing earlier. And you can I understand that at some point there could be confusion between today's report, tomorrow's report, but as you can see, we're very interested and will carefully read tomorrow's report. In the study you conducted, did you measure the impact on the reduction of GHGs in those 4 provinces? I think that's one of the objectives here. Do we have any data? Thank you for putting the question to me again and allowing me to figure this out. Yes, in this report, we did measure greenhouse gas reductions from 2019 to 2024 that would result from carbon pricing in those 4 provinces. It varies from 4% in Ontario and to 15% in Saskatchewan in that period, 2019 to 24. Is that in the document? Can you give me the reference? Yes, I have it in English, page 7, in French, page 8. Page 8 of the report. Could you guide me here? The graph 2.1 shows that receipts increased considerably. The price of carbon increased a lot. If you look at the period 2019 to 2024, the price of carbon went up a lot, but receipts didn't go up at the same level. So carbon intensity has been reduced, and the -15, -19, -6, etc., shows to what extent the greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced. It's more marked in Saskatchewan because it generates electricity with fossil fuels, whereas that's far lower in Ontario because electricity generation in Ontario is less dependent on fossil fuel. Okay. I would validate this with you here. Can we say that with this program in the 4 provinces, there will be a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of 5% between 2019 and 2024? Because we know that Ontario has a bigger population and carries more weight. So perhaps 4% is, in absolute terms, larger than the 15% in Saskatchewan. If we were to group together these 4 provinces, will we be reducing greenhouse gas emissions during that period from 4 to 5%? Would it be erroneous to state that? That's probably closer to 6 or 7%, because in terms of population, of course, there are significant differences. But in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, the difference between Saskatchewan and Ontario is not that large. So a reduction of 15% in Saskatchewan in absolute terms is still significant, because Saskatchewan is a higher emitter per capita than Ontario. The exact percentage remains to be determined. Will we see that in tomorrow's report? You'll see something else in tomorrow's report. How much time do I have left, Mr. Chairman? Okay, we're talking about 90%, and that 10% that was left will be allocated to what? It's given to the most affected sectors, those that are affected by carbon pricing. In terms of aid measures, I don't have the details here, but that's anticipated. I don't know if all the measures have been anticipated and decided upon, but part of them. Is it in forms of subsidies or grants? Yes. In Table 1, in the French document, in the summary, how can you explain that in 2023-24, there's a reduction in the income here, in the revenue? Go from 20, 30, 40, 50, and then it stays at 50. The tariff's the same, but the revenue is lower. Well, it's because the tariff stays the same, but the intensity, the total intensity will probably go down because of the effect of carbon pricing. And contrary to previous years, where the emissions go down a little bit, the increase in the carbon price will more than compensate for the lowering in emissions. But the word you used is probably. What I mean by that is that, once again, these are models hoping that consumption and population don't go up too much, that businesses don't increase their production. That's hypothetical. These are predictions, forecasts. There's always an element of uncertainty. I could give you a very simple example to illustrate that uncertainty. If the price of the barrel of gas goes down by $10 and the economy continues to go well, gas prices will go down. Gas price won't have, or carbon price won't have much impact. People will drive more and drive heavier cars. They'll be able to afford them. Those are things that can affect the forecasts. Did you compare this with other countries who have similar systems to see what the impact is after 5 or 6 or 10 years? Yes, we compared it with European countries where there's been carbon trading system or some kind of carbon pricing. We compared what happened there in terms of elasticity and consumer reaction to these price changes and the imposition of a ceiling on emissions.
Leo, for his last 6 minutes of questions.
Yeah, this has been very interesting. Thank you so much. And I guess I'd like to, based on the testimony today, what we've heard is that it's going to cost less. People are going to receive more in the rebate than they're going to pay out, 8 out of 10 Canadians. And that's across all the provinces, all those areas. We've talked about the actual impact on GHG reductions in that a price on pollution is effective in reducing GHG emissions. We've talked about not just the reduction in those emissions, but we've also talked about the intensity of those emissions. So as the economy grows, the population grows, GHGs just aren't dropping themselves, but they're also dropping in relation to the actual growth in those other areas. So the intensity is dropping even further as we go along. And you're saying, depending on where, it could be 4% in Ontario, 19% in Saskatchewan, but because of Saskatchewan having such a much higher carbon intensity as a province, overall that's going to lead to a 6 to 7% reduction in overall GHG emissions that you have modeled by 2023, 2024. And so that's not even projecting out to 2030. And once again, the other areas that you model. So would you agree then with most economists out there that a price on pollution is an effective way to reduce carbon emissions, a cost-efficient and effective way?
It's certain that as an economist, the more expensive something becomes, the less demand there will be for it. Is it an effective way? It is certainly an effective way. I'd say it's not the only way. As all people in the field know, there's also regulation. That's one way. And subsidies, that's another way. But generally speaking, the consensus among economists is that a broad-based price on carbon is the least disruptive way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Even though people are going to receive more back than they're paying out, it's still efficient. Even though they're not feeling the expense necessarily, it's still efficient way to do it. It's still the most price effective. It's the best market mechanism that can be used in order to reduce GHG emissions.
Well, it's certainly one way, and it's a way that is less disruptive to the economy, more transparent than other ways.
And that's based on your models, and those models are based on generally accepted economic principles and based on what you've seen in other markets around the world.
Yes.
And so you've got good evidence to back that up. And is it not also, we were speaking earlier about the other 50 plus measures that are going to go into trying to deal with a price on pollution. And as I said, there's in that modeling that was done by the government, there were 79 megatons that were implemented but unmodeled measures. Things like investments in clean tech, the Strategic Innovation Fund, the electric vehicle rebates, and public transit. So in the report that you're releasing tomorrow, when you said you're taking those 50 plus measures into account, does it include those measures as well? Because I'm wondering, a lot of the measures, and we heard this from the Environment Commissioner when she came out with her audit, a lot of these measures are going to take 3 or 4 or 5 years to really understand the true impact that it's going to take.
So I cannot speak for each and every one of these measures, but we have taken into consideration the policies that had been announced as of September 2018. So I cannot determine whether we have taken into consideration all the potential measures under the Strategic Investment Fund, because some of these measures are specific measures and specific investments still have to be made. Same with the public transit. Some of the investments for public transit will reduce greenhouse gases, but it's difficult to determine the extent to which they will before the specific projects are known and before the ridership is projected or can be assumed. So we have taken into consideration the broad measures, but the specifics, such as the ones you mentioned, probably not. It would be very difficult and risky.
And based on the output, based on the OBPS, as you said, once again, based on your models, has it been shown to be an effective measure in order to incentivize businesses to innovate, to reduce their GHG emissions, so that they become those who are receiving credits versus those who are having to pay for them and buy them?
I haven't looked, or we haven't looked at the effectiveness of the OBPS. We have looked only at the measures that the revenues this will generate. So we have not pronounced or looked at carefully at whether it is an effective or even a cost-effective way of reducing greenhouse gases.
And whether finally, whether the revenues continue to increase or not, 90% of those revenues are still going to come back to residents within the province in which those revenues were collected. So even, as was discussed earlier, this is what we hope for, right? As we grow, emissions are reduced, so therefore the amount of revenues generated from those emissions are going to flatline and then reduce as well. This is a good thing. This is actually the intent behind the system in the first place, is to incentivize those changes in behavior and to invest in innovation in order to reduce GHG emissions.
Well, our assumption is that 90% of the revenues will continue to be returned to households, and 90% of a declining pie will be smaller, obviously. So,
cost.
Yes.
We're out of time.
Thank you.
So now we're going to go over to Mr. Stetsky. He gets to have the last round of questions, and he gets 3 minutes. So Wayne, or Mr. Stetsky, over to you for the final round of questions.
So I think you've answered it, but people that I talk to always have two questions. One, is there evidence that having a price on carbon will reduce GHG emissions? And I think you've answered that, but I'd like you to kind of speak to that again, if you can. And secondly, as the price goes up, and I'll use a simple model, if somebody is paying $100 now because of the carbon tax and they're getting $110 back, if they end up paying $200, do they potentially get a rebate that is the equivalent? So they might get $220 back, or is there some sort of a magic number on the price of carbon where it starts to negatively impact even those 80% of families along the way? So two parts, two questions.
So on the second part, because of the mathematical link between the revenues generated and the rebate, I cannot see that many scenarios where individuals would be worse off, because for that to happen, there would be very few scenarios where would that be the case. It would be where there are no exports for all intents and purposes. Then in that case, the exports part would not be generating any revenues. So given that households would receive 90%, they would on a net basis pay. So the first part of your question was, again, sorry?
Evidence showing that having
Yes.
a price on carbon actually does reduce GHGs from your perspective.
There is evidence that a price on carbon does reduce greenhouse gases. The debate, and I'm not the one who will settle that debate, is whether it's too high a price to pay to reduce greenhouse gases, or is it an acceptable price to pay? And that's up to people like yourselves to determine that. But there is obviously evidence to show that if you put a price on greenhouse gas emissions, they will, all other things being equal, tend to go down. The issue is whether you have to put a low price or a very high price. It is not always an immediate response because it involves capital expenditures and people have fixed assets that they replace. So the time lag to respond to that market or to that signal can be long, but it does indeed reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
And as long as 90% of it is being returned, if the price doubled, there's still net benefit to the majority of families in Canada under this, if they're under this particular pricing scheme.
Yes, but at such a level, there would start to be disruptive impacts for some industries, those that are carbon intensive. The higher you go on that price, the more disruptive it becomes.
Great. Well, that concludes our session with you. Thank you so much for both of you for being here. And I know you have another team member who has joined us today. So thank you for being here and for the work, the very important work that you do on behalf of Canadians. With that, we're going to suspend for a couple of minutes and we'll move into closed for some closed business.
you